So where are you guys? Tell me what your location is.
Well, I'm in Salt Lake here in Utah.
Are you?
Yeah,
How many hives have you got?
2.
What's your weather doing in Salt Lake?
Well, we just had an absolutely unbelievable windstorm because of the position of high and low pressure areas here in the West. And they must have lost thousands of trees in the Salt Lake Valley.
Oof.
And at the university, University of Utah, they recorded one gust of 115 miles an hour. So it's been kind of crazy. We've had really hot weather, then stretches of cold weather, and we're just beginning to warm back up again. And so it's been pretty crazy.
Wow. So I'm going to admit, Rhonda, who is also in Salt Lake City, she had told me that there had been some crazy wind stuff, but wow, over 100 miles an hour is a lot of wind.
Yeah.
So Haley, where are you and what's your weather doing?
I'm up in Canada, Vancouver Island, and woke up to forest fire smoke coming up from
California.
States.
Yeah.
California, yeah. That's not good.
Are your skies turning orange like they're showing San Francisco and everybody?
No, not like that. Just like hazy, like gray, smoky. Yeah, I think it's probably sunny, but
yeah, if you could tell, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Rhonda. And there's Lori as well. Lori and Rhonda, can you unmute and tell us where you are and what your weather's doing?
Oh, hi, it's Lori. How are you?
Hi.
So I'm in eastern Long Island, actually, in Montauk. So it just yesterday really started to cool down, and the humidity is much lower. I mean, it's just lovely early fall weather, probably like 70s during the day, and then mid to low 60s in the evening.
Nice. All right, it's a little less extreme. Rhonda, can you hear me? Rhonda. Let's see if I can unmute her. Apparently not. Or unvideo her.
Sorry about that.
No sweat. David Freetag, show us your face. Tell us where you are and what your weather's doing. Dave and I have been chatting back and forth about his bees lately. Dave, you got a camera? Rhonda, camera? Hello?
Lights on, but nobody's home.
Have you seen some of the very funny memes about trying to do Zoom meetings and just how whack they are? Jeez.
No, I haven't seen them.
Thank goodness that we have it, but oh my gosh. All right, let's see. I can get. There's Dave. Dave, talk to us. Hello.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi.
Where are you? And what's your weather doing?
Connecticut, and it's nice and sunny and cool.
70s cool? 60s cool? All right. Hey, Rhonda. Can we get you to chime in? Hello.
There, but she's on mute.
Hey there.
Hi, how are you?
I had sent a chat to the whole group that in order for me to get audio, I needed internet. And like I told you, Christy, we had that huge windstorm on Tuesday. And I'm still without power or internet, but I did figure it out. I got just enough broadband signal where I'm sitting in the dark corner of my room. And so I wrote that I wish I could read lips. I can see ya, but I can't. Yeah, no audio, but I'm good now. So
okay, all right. Well, you're not the only Salt Lake City person in here. There's Rhonda meet Phil, Phil meet Rhonda.
hi, Phil.
Hi, Rhonda. Where are you located?
I'm in Holiday, and I'm still part of the 30,000 from the 180,000 that lost power. So I don't have any power since Tuesday, 7 a.m.
Yeah, I've got a good friend, some good friends that live in Holiday, and they just got their power back last night about 6:30.
Good gracious.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's crazy. Big cleanup going on everywhere. Got the big conifers, 100-year-old conifers falling down on people's homes. And it's I said they haven't seen anything like it in a very, very long time. 110 mile per hour winds. Yeah, it's weird. High mountain desert, and we have hurricane force winds.
All right, well, there's an interesting connection for you guys to make, but I guess we will give up on anybody else getting here today. They will have to have a look at the recording. Let me just open the floor in case there's someone sitting there with a burning question to what's on your mind? What do you think the weather has to do with it? What are you thinking about your bees going into fall? Anybody?
I actually have a couple questions.
Rock on then.
Okay, so like I said, I'm Eastern Long Island. I got my bees a little bit late this year. I lost all my hives last year.
Oh,
and so we got the bees into the hive. We fed them with sugar water pretty, for a long time, probably for about almost a month. And two of the hives seemed kind of on the weak side, so we combined them. And since mid-July, they've been doing great. The only issue is, out of the three I now have, one seems to have pretty good honey stock. The other two just still have tons of brood. So I was thinking, should I start feeding them again? I have protein patties and I have sugar water. And just for the record, I have varroa hives, so I'm not using a Langstroth or a top bar.
Okay.
So because we have the brood and the honey in all the same boxes, the bees are healthy. I did my oxalic acid treatment. I'll do my third one this week. I don't have a lot of mites. I have some beetles, but besides that, everything is good. I have a zillion bees, just not a lot of honey, and I'm concerned about the winter.
Well, I would definitely say feed, because if they're not interested, then okay. But if they want it, then they've got it. Isn't it interesting that you've got three hives and they're so different?
They're all right next to each other.
Doesn't make any sense. And what is your flow like there? Do you end up with fall stuff like asters and goldenrod and those sorts of things?
We have asters, we have goldenrod, still have tons of buddleia that's blooming. I've got a lot of vegetation. I have a big property, so my vegetable garden's still going, and a wildflower meadow. It was a dry summer, so we don't have as like this. Usually the tree blooms, or some of the later tree blooms, are still like crepe myrtle and so forth. But all of the beach plums and all of the rose of Sharon, all the kind of indigenous flowering plants are still pumping. So they got plenty to eat. But and they're out there foraging. I'm just worried about the honey stores for the winter.
Right. You'd like to see them have a bunch of it. Like now would be nice.
Right.
So I think just to err on the side of caution, having feed available, but it sounds like there's plenty there. So, we trust that they will do what bees do and get some of that packed away. Wow. So you started out with 3 and then combining?
No, I started out with 4.
4 and combined 2, so you have 3 now.
Yes.
Gotcha. Dave, tell us what. Sorry,
go ahead.
I was just going to start up a conversation with Dave, but finish what you were going to say.
No, go ahead.
Well, Dave Freitag, he's in Connecticut. And we've been talking about your bees. Share what you've been seeing. Hit the button at the bottom to unmute you.
How about now?
There you go. Now we can hear you.
There I am. I'm kind of in the same situation. I got 3 hives. One of them's storing honey. I got 3 top bars, and the other 2 just have brood. They don't have any stores. I've been feeding them, and just 1-to-1 now.
Yeah.
And there's still stuff around to forage, but they're not. I don't know. It's hard to tell. It's been a weird year.
Yeah.
I went in last week to check them, and out of the 3 hives, one of them the jar was completely empty after like 2 or 3 days in between checking. One of them was down halfway, and the other one they didn't even touch. And the one that was down completely empty is the one that has the stores. So I don't know what's going on.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. That makes no sense to me.
But if I put it out in the yard, it's gone. I can go through a gallon in an hour.
Oh, so you're feeding somebody else's bees probably too.
Yeah, I was feeding somebody else's, so I stopped doing that. So now I'm feeding in the hive itself, but I don't understand what's going on. There's plenty of, I still have goldenrod and everything just coming into bloom now. Like I say, I got Rose of Sharon, but they don't go on to Rose of Sharon. The bumblebees do. My garden is still blooming some, but I got a lot of just native weeds and stuff around that they can go on, but I don't see much going on in 2 of the hives. But the queens are all in there. There's still brood in there. There was the last time I looked, but like I told you, I sent those pictures and I had a couple mites, so I gotta do something with that. I haven't even checked for a count yet.
What has anybody seen about drones? Are the drones getting tossed out of your hives?
Yeah, I got 2 of them that they're out of, and the last one that still had drones, I noticed a couple of them were on the ground, walking around. So they must be throwing them out of that one. But 2 of the hives are already out, and those hives don't have any stores in them.
No stores and no brood still, or still lots of.
There's still brood, but there's no. It's all mostly the worker. There's no drone brood in there, but the drones aren't even in there. So I don't know.
Anybody else seen your drones disappear?
This is Rhonda. I just now have drones going in. Like they were gone for, I don't know if that's normal. I'm still trying to figure out the drone situation. They were gone for all of the summer. Is that normal? I had no drones.
No, that's weird.
Yeah, I didn't know if that's normal. Like where do they go? And then now they're coming back in, and I'm watching them fly in. I've seen only like 1 or 2 tossed. They're coming in to get their final, I don't know, food. So that's what I have. But
you guys have had really high temps for a while, so it's not like they thought it was cooling down and being fall, right?
Right, both. We had this crazy right before the storm. It was nearly 100 degrees many days in a row. But then we got slammed with, the night I lost power. That was a low of 37, which was really a little early for that low of a temp, and kind of probably hard on the vegetation too. Although there's still plenty limping along. And I agree with the last. I missed the name. The last person, that Rose of Sharon seems to be kind of useless for the honeybees. I see carpenter bees on it. I don't even see a bumble on it, just the carpenters. So, but anyway, that's my drone situation. I'm sure. And now we're back in the 80s and 50s, 60 at night. So it might be a minute before I see the toss.
Right.
The drones.
Don't worry. Haley, do I remember correctly that how many hives do you have? Any?
Just one.
Just one.
My first year, I actually saw they were making drones, but only like just a few, like 4 or 5 drone cells. And that was
recently?
About 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
So that was interesting, but overall, significantly less drones around the hive than there have been.
Yeah, that would seem appropriate. I don't see him on here, but I had conversation this past week with a man in Denver, and their weather went from 90 to 27 and snow overnight. So he
Yeah.
was, of course, freaking out. And the question becomes, at that point, are there enough bees that they can get in cluster and stay clustered over the brood to keep that alive when the temperatures do that, and then open right back up the very next day? He said that they had not, they didn't seem to lose much forage, so it wasn't any kind of a hard frost, so there was still food. But what a shocker.
I insulated. I did all my normal winterizing right before that. Was that by chance Corwin that you were talking to?
No, I was talking to
okay.
Carl.
Because of course he was marketing all of the, the top bar covers that they make and stuff a week before that, and looking at the forecast.
Right. For sure.
They're in Colorado, and so they didn't seem to miss a beat. It didn't but I didn't have 27. I had more, and my property was probably lower than 37, but it was still above freezing. So they're doing well still.
So in amongst COVID and the economy, climate change, sometimes I just want to throw up my hands and say, I got no clue. What are they doing?
Yeah, I'm having real odd behavior in both my hives. I have one of your gold star top bar hives. Mm-hmm. And in that one, I was in there yesterday, and there were 7 or 8 bars that had at least some brood in them. Mm-hmm. Some of them had quite a bit of brood, but they have honey across the top in those bars. The other bars have some honey in them. None of them are fully drawn nor fully filled. Mm-hmm. But there's some in one and some in another, and I guess I would have to say, if you were to combine all of what I found, there may be 4 bars of honey.
4 full bars between 2 hives?
No, I'm just talking about my one gold star top bar. Mm-hmm. It swarmed early last spring, and for some reason, either the queen they made or the queen they left behind didn't make it. So I had to requeen that hive.
And was that spring of 20 or 19?
Spring of 20.
Okay, so this year.
Because they came out of winter. I've never been able to overwinter a hive before, and this hive came out of winter just going gangbusters. And I had a notion they're probably going to swarm. I put in all the extra bars I had, but they still decided that they were going to split up.
We're making more bees.
Yeah, so I had to requeen that hive. My other hive is one of those funny looking hexagonal hives.
The Cathedral hive from Corwin?
Yes. And the queen that came with that hive initially, I hung the queen cage vertically, and the attendants died and blocked the way, and that queen could never get out. So I had to requeen that hive as well, and have found that it's probably much safer to put the queen cage in horizontally so that you don't have the problem of the attendants falling on top of the candy.
Well, here's a point about that. It can happen, yes, that the attendants will block the exit, but the beekeeper who goes back in to be sure that she's released can also simply pick up that cage and peel the screen off and dump her in.
Sure.
So watching
Sure.
for that, it's a good thing to be a little nervous about, because if she can't get out, you'll lose her eventually.
Yeah. But that hive I am desperately concerned about. They have a fair amount of brood, but virtually no stores at all.
Really?
Not a lot of drawn comb. And at one point, I noticed they were getting robbed because we had a pretty good summer, and then late summer we had a real dearth of nectar flow, and so I fixed up a gadget to keep the hive from getting robbed, and they're certainly coming and going like crazy, but there's just a little bit of pollen and almost no honey, so I'm going to try to feed them like crazy, but I'm not sure that hive is going to make it.
Yeah.
I was going to talk to the folks in Boulder and see if they could sell me a couple of bars of honey, because this is one disadvantage. I've got the conventional top bar and the hexagonal top bar.
So you don't have interchangeable equipment?
No, I do not.
Yeah.
I got kind of interested in the hexagonal hive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that I like it. It's
That's what I was going to ask. How is it to work?
Well, it's kind of a pain because of the way the bars sit.
Let me interrupt you for just a second, so that everybody knows what we're talking about. Corwin Bell runs Backyard Hive out of Boulder, Colorado, and this Cathedral hive that Phil is talking about, instead of a flat top bar, has a top bar that makes the other half of a hexagon, essentially. And, he's had it out for a couple of years. I have worked with one, but it was so early on that I don't really have any, ongoing experience with how it got through to the end of the year. So sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. The way the bars sit in the hive, if you're not really careful, when you put a bar back down, one end will fall down into the bottom, and so you really have to learn to be really careful about how you handle the bars, because
that's not cool.
no, that's not cool. But I was going to talk to send Corwin a message and see if he's willing or able to send me or sell me some bars of honey, because otherwise there's no way this hive's going to make it through the winter.
How many bars of brood did you say?
That one probably has 4 or 5 bars of brood.
Is that total bars in the hive? How many total bars?
Well, the hive is completely full of bars, most of them empty, but in terms of there's probably 3 or 4 bars of brood and 1 or 2 bars of honeycomb, and neither of which has a tremendous amount of honey in it.
Okay, well, let me comment on that as far as feeding. As your temperatures come down, increase the amount of sugar in your syrup so that it's thicker. Go from 1 to 1, start working your way 1.5 to 1, eventually 2 to 1 as the temperatures come down, and see if that makes any difference. I don't know that it makes a lot of difference as far as the bees taking it and turning it into stores, But the one thing that's important about this time of year is that 1-to-1 syrup is a lot of water, and that moisture getting into the hive, especially if it's a smaller hive, is a dangerous thing in the winter. So be aware of that. And thicker syrup simply means less water for them to evaporate out of the honey, so-called honey at that point.
And
I
Phil,
appreciate.
I had that last year as well. And I got my bees through by doing what Christy said for this fall. You know, in Utah, we can have a long, decent fall too. And they put up all of that 2-to-1 syrup. And then I switched to fondant, which actually desiccates a little bit any excess moisture in the hive. And I fed, and it was a small hive. And I was told, you know, there was no way I was going to get them through. They were too small. And that they're the ones that came out this spring, just like you, bursting at the seams. They swarmed. I had 2 after swarms, 1 swarm and 2 after swarms, because I didn't have my new top bar just in time. And the same thing where that queen was laying, the queen they made, but then something happened to her. I don't know if they ousted her or if I squished her in an inspection or what, but they actually were able to make another queen themselves. I saw actually I think it was supersedure, because I just saw the supersedure cell, just 1 cell, and they successfully reared another queen. But anyway, I wouldn't give up on the feeding. We still have time. You might be surprised. I mean, you can
Yeah,
get
well,
through
I'm
the
certainly
food.
certainly willing to and able to do that.
Yeah.
Spend a little sugar.
One
Yeah, definitely. Organic
and
sugar at at Costco is my
yeah.
friend.
The other thing is I am building some fondant frames for the Cathedral Hive because they don't have the ones conveniently like Christy has, and so
I bet you can retrofit. I
yeah.
use
Well,
hers in a
I have
different
enough
hive as well.
woodworking capability that
Yeah,
I'm in the
that's good.
process of building myself some fondant frames, and I guess I could put those in now, and also we'll certainly have fondant in the hive when I button them up for winter.
Absolutely.
That's what I did with my big top bar that did so well, and they during the winter they consumed absolutely every scrap of it.
Wow.
But that brings up another question. If you find that you've got honey stored on both sides of the brood, is it okay to move any of that stored honey that doesn't have any brood to the other side of the brood so that they don't try to go to the short side, consume what's there, and then can't get turned around past the brood and
What you're
back out
describing is absolutely the big risk in the wintertime, because once they go into cluster, they need to stay on food, up against
right.
food or below food. They got to be touching the food. And so if you find yourself in a situation where you've got dry, empty brood comb, no honey stores in it, and then honey, your cluster is going to start here.
Right.
Work through the honey or the fondant or whatever. But if you've got some honey here and then you have a bunch of empty brood bars and then honey here, and they start here, like you say, they cannot come back across this empty comb while they have to be in cluster.
Sure.
They have to be on their honey. And that'll happen in a Langstroth hive too. And even in just the space of 10 frames, they'll get over here and there were 2 frames, consume that, and they can't get across it. So I am a big proponent for moving it all to one side as the fall comes on. You will probably find, especially 2nd and 3rd year hives, that they do it anyway. So it's a beekeeper manipulation. I don't know that the bees worry about it, but I sure do, because if you're in cold temps, and when I started in Maine, of course, cold temperatures were my nemesis at the time. So I think it makes sense to move it. I think it makes sense to try to maintain the order of the combs because of the way they jigsaw puzzle together. But having it all on one side prevents what you're talking about, where you end up with a dry, empty comb between two food sources. And
yeah, well, that was my guess. And the other question, I've been investigating pollen patties, and I see reviews of some of the suppliers, and they say, oh, it's so sticky that the bees are getting stuck in it and dying.
Well, in the fall, you don't particularly need pollen patties. Pollen patties tend to stimulate the raising of brood, something that you don't want as you're going into winter. The thing that your bees are actually doing at this point is you had a population that went zoom and you got to July or August or whenever, peak of the summer. And as they start to get smaller, then you're faced with the situation that as they get smaller, the mite level goes up, the type of bees being raised changes to fall or winter bees. And so all of this starts to play into, if you don't mind me sort of hijacking the subject here, the mite question, and what are you going to do about that at this point in the year?
Well, it was interesting. I thought that my Gold Star hive had mites, and I ran a couple tests with sticky stuff underneath the bottom screen, and I didn't see anything at all. And
okay, I would change you up on that and have you do a sugar shake.
Yeah, well, I do have. I did get a sugar shake kit, and I also do have the wherewithal for vaporizing oxalic acid should it become necessary.
Okay, yeah. Monitoring first is really the thing that is most helpful, because if you know what your numbers are and then you apply a treatment, whatever your choice might be there, then you have a baseline to work from, and you know whether your treatment is successful, and you know what your mite level is.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm going to be offering on the website any minute now, as soon as I get the pricing and all of that worked out, is a queen gel. If you saw the email that you got that got you here, we are working on this, which I love the cleverness of it. The guy who makes the stuff for me is really smart. So just to give you a quick on this, the idea of using oxalic acid wants your hive to be broodless. If it's broodless, your efficacy rate with the use of oxalic acid is in the high 90s. So that's a pretty great recommendation right there. But the fact also is that it doesn't get into the wax. It's not lipophilic. And those of you who have heard me say it's all about the wax that I've been saying for 10 years, I think that's super important. You're not contaminating the wax. The articles and stuff that I sent in the chat bar, please take a look and download those if they're of interest. But they talked about there that it is not getting in the wax. Residues in honey are negligible. But to get broodless can be really a challenge, especially you guys where it's still warm. You need to use oxalic at above 37 degrees. So you're looking for that point at which they're broodless so that your treatment is really highly efficient. So this is a Gold Star top bar, essentially. And this is a queen gel, or you might call it a queen sandwich. And look how this works. You can walk your queen in there without trying to jiggle her through a tiny hole. Once she's in there, you can see her, so you can avoid squishing her as you put the other half of this critter together. And now you have a queen sandwich. And this is queen excluder material. So worker bees can get in and out through here, which they need to do to take care of her while she's in here. And then you drop the sandwich piece back into this slot in here. And your goal here is to have her, whoops, let's not do it upside down. That would make better sense if we did this way. your goal there is to go 14 days with her caged, which allows for all of the existing capped brood, or all the existing eggs, larvae, and capped brood to hatch out. And then when you release her at that point, nothing gets capped until you're outside that window where you can treat for with oxalic. So I've been looking for a good way to be able to cage your queen in a way that was, you know, tolerable. I had someone on the Facebook group who posted photos of the ones that look like a hair barrette that you squeeze. She had a queen caged in there, and it was pretty disastrous. She had worker bees stuck in it, and it just did not go well. So I questioned whether the manufacturer might have been different than the one that I had seen used for that. But this was a way to walk around that problem and make it easier for you to get her in there and make it safer for her to be in there for a 2-week period. So watch for that. That's coming out, like I said, as soon as I get the numbers crunched, you can get it on the website.
Can I ask a quick oxalic question?
Sure.
So I don't have one of your hives yet. I'll get one next year, but I'm still working. So in the interim, what I did is I treated with oxalic like every 6 to 7 days. And then, so I treated, you know, day 1, day 7, day, you know, and then day 4. So you get through the entire life cycle.
Right.
And then we did a check and you know, it really worked. It was very easy. It worked. So then the question is it possible to maybe then do a final one-time blast, say by, you know, mid to end October, so right around first frost time, realizing that hopefully we'll be out of brood, and that'll kind of give them one last blast to, I had very low mite counts. I mean, literally I had like 1 or 2 out of probably.
Out of a 300 sample?
Yeah, maybe even more. Okay. So it was low, but they were there, but it was low.
Right. It's interesting, the numbers and what they call the threshold nowadays. Because I can remember Jennifer Berry talking about 15 bees per a sample of 100 being a tolerable number. And now it's 3 bees in a 300 bee, or 3 mites in a 300 bee sample. And, you know, at that point, you're calling that a threshold. So essentially a sample of 300 bees coming up with 3 mites is numbers that make everybody go, treat. So I have been doing some reading about the repeated treatments like you're talking about, because getting broodless is really the challenge. And there seems to be a lean towards that's hard on them. I don't have any data on how hard. I mean, nobody is writing anything that says we're losing queens because of that. That tends to be formic acid. But I would like to say that the lower number of exposures to it, probably a better thing. But I'm really glad to hear that your results were great, that the efficacy was awesome.
They're great, and the bees seemed essentially, just unaffected. They were
pretty much unfazed.
They don't like it, right? You kind of have to plug them up, and they don't like getting stuck in there or not, or the ones who come back who are blocked out for the 10, 15 minutes you've got the hive going. But overall, it was really effective, and we tested after the second treatment, a couple days later, and we couldn't find a mite. We're still going to do the third treatment just kind of prophylactically, because last year I lost all my hives to mites, and in a matter of weeks, it was like they were great and then they were all dead. It was horrible. So that just for the record, we've had some luck with this treatment schedule.
Right. I have to say that, I probably go on and on and on a little bit excessively about how much I love Italy and the way they do things with their bees, but Italy doesn't have this dichotomy like we have in the United States, where there's food and then there's organic food. In Italy, if it's food, it's organic. They don't play games like we do with putting poison on things. So when they have adopted a treatment, I take them pretty seriously. And they and the rest of Europe as well have been big fans of using oxalic acid for years. Some of the articles that I sent in the chat are dated 2000, 2002, like way back. They've been doing it for a long time. And the gentleman who had me go to Italy to talk about the book when it came out has been keeping bees for ages and ages, and has just, he started out with at least 30 Langstroth hives when I met him, and now he's running those plus chop bars all over parts of northern Italy, and that's their method, and it seems to just do a great job. But it really does seem to matter that you try to get it at a broodless period. And
That
that's
was my
one.
question. Yeah, Christy,
Sorry?
in Italy, are they doing the series of 3? Because I'm
No.
really trying to avoid that too. I've read it's hard on the bees, particularly on new queens. I have a new queen. Yeah.
Like I said, I haven't gotten anything back other than the vague comment that repeated treatments is hard on the bees. So I don't have any numbers to put to that.
But in Italy, are they doing just the one blast?
They are caging queens and doing one treatment when there's no brood.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, you know, I think it's funny because, you know, Lori, if you did multiple treatments and had great luck, awesome. Then the question becomes, getting broodless is some work. Doing multiple treatments is some work. So if you fall back to Michael Bush's position of, you know, the lazier you can be about it, the better, which is harder, getting broodless and doing one treatment or doing 3 treatments without worrying about the broodlessness.
What's your philosophy on a single treatment in the spring before the brood comes in prophylactically?
I think that I would monitor to see what it looked like, because if you did something in the fall that was super effective, your mite levels should still be low then, because that's your lowest period of the year for brood, and brood is what the mites need in order to reproduce.
That's what I did last year. If you get them in the fall, you know, right before the cold temps kick
Right,
in, no need, obviously, than in the spring.
What was that?
I said then there's no need in the spring if you zap them at
or
the
you
beginning of
hope.
winter.
Yeah, that would be the hope for sure, to have the fall.
90%, yeah, efficacy of if they're broodless when you do it, right?
And another thing to be said about doing it in the fall is that when you drop the brood numbers in the fall, then you are bringing the numbers in the hive down at a time of year when that's appropriate.
Right.
More appropriate probably than the spring, when what you really want is build up. So I guess, Lori, where that leaves me is, if you've got high numbers, so if you monitor, you see numbers and it's necessary, then by all means. And if you monitor and you don't see that there's any issue.
And just to confirm, no protein patty in the fall.
I would say no to protein patties, because you don't need more babies in the fall. You need babies in the spring. That's when the protein patties matter.
Okay.
Totally.
Christy, do you still promote sugar dusting? Not the sugar rolls, sugar dusting every 2 weeks? Yeah, because I watched a video of yours a while back, and yeah, but I haven't heard you mention it.
Because I kind of moved on to wanting something where we could quote the efficacy. I have not had bad reports about using a sugar dusting, but I haven't had enough good ones to get me excited about it. When you can say to me that, you know, these studies, multiple studies, show efficacy of over 90% with a treatment that doesn't get into the wax and doesn't contaminate the honey, why not? Because what I kept getting back for feedback with the sugar dusting was similar to trying to do oxalic or anything else that only gets the phoretic mites, that you just had to keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it.
Oh yeah, that's the only way it works. It's not a one and done by any means. Like, I've been doing it every 2 weeks, all last year, all this year. And yeah, I just think it keeps everything down to a dull roar. I mean, I never see more than 10 mites that drop out after dusting the whole hive every 2 weeks.
Interesting.
And I check right after, and I check a 24-hour and 48 hours. And, you know, I haven't been at it long enough to, you know.
No, you're building the history.
Exactly. But yeah, because I don't want to vaporize, and I don't want to do a series of 3 if I don't have to. Now, obviously, if you have high mites, you're potentially saving your bees by doing the series of 3 OA treatments. But yeah, I was just curious. That's good to know, because I know, you know, scientific beekeeping, they have a lot of good studies on it, that if you're regular about it on a timetable like that, it's pretty effective. Yeah, I'm not going to just that be my only option, but I thought that was pretty cool. It helps me close up the hive too. It makes a really easy inspection because they're busy. I can close the
exactly.
hive without squishing anybody, and it's yeah, I don't know. good to know. That explains why I haven't heard you say anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a anti thing. It's just like a one and done is a simpler thing. If you're talking about a bee yard that's got 2 hives, it's one picture. If you're talking about a bee yard with 20 hives, it's a different
Oh, yeah.
picture. So all of
Right.
those factors play in. On scientific beekeeping, I have to say that Randy Oliver, he has apparently retired technically, and his
Really?
sons are running his bees while he continues with data, but I haven't found anything on his site that is current. So he was at one point testing different mixes of oxalic acid mixed with the glycerin, soaking shop towels.
Mm-hmm.
And he was playing with ratios of glycerin to oxalic acid and what size towels and maybe other carriers. And that's just kind of sitting out there still. I hope that he comes back with more data, but I imagine he's kind of been flipped upside down with COVID too. So
We have a lot of people doing shop towel method here. I just don't know how to do it yet with a top bar, you know?
It's not, if you're into approvals,
Yeah.
it's not approved for use in beehives. He has a special dispensation for a bunch of the research that he does to play with his bees in that way, looking for stuff. So just know that and then do as you do. But I
There's
would
nothing
continue the
approved.
shop towel thing, although it tends to work a little better in a situation where you can lay the shop towels on top of frames and the oxalic acid is able to move up and down as opposed to in a top bar where you end up putting them on the bottom, I suppose. But anyway.
There's people hanging them from the bars. I mean, there's a lot of people doing a lot of things out there to read about and having some good results. I just haven't been, well, I haven't needed to.
Yeah.
Because I've had the brood breaks, the natural brood breaks. So I'm really looking forward to the queen cage because I think that's what saved my bacon both years now is just my natural breaks that have happened.
Right, that you had swarm situations, so you had that break.
Ah,
Yeah.
yep.
That makes sense. Let's see. So I sent you those articles. Did I pop the link? I want to pop a link in here too. Here is a link to the some of the oxalic stuff on scientific beekeeping as well. Time is it's 11:49. I haven't heard any noise out of Zoom yet telling me they're going to shut us down, so we're going to keep talking. But if the meeting does suddenly disappear, it will be because they hit us with their time limit. But what else anybody got?
Well, still sticking with the mite problem.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it true that if you have mites, you're going to see some brood cells that look pretty odd as the mites dig their way out?
The mites actually exit the cells with the emerging bee. So you're not
Okay.
going to actually be able to tell by the cells unless, now one caveat to that comment is that very hygienic bees are known for being able to detect the problem in the cell, specifically a large mite infestation, and the bees themselves will rip open a cell and pull that pupa out. Who was it? Was it Rhonda I was talking to about? No, somebody emailed me lately and they were finding white undeveloped pupa that had been pulled out of their hive. Was that you, Dave?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. That's that's the other thing that I was going to get into is ask about that.
Mm-hmm.
If that's
wondered,
something I should worry about, or if it's just a natural thing that they're trying to detect the mites and try to control it.
It could be a couple of things. It could be mites. My question would be, do you have any idea how fresh those pupa were when you found them? Because if there were mites on them and some time went by before you discovered the pupa, then mites might have disappeared. So there might have been 3, 4, 5, 6, a bunch of mites on it. But the other thing is that they will sometimes do away with brood that they know they can't care for.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen them cannibalize larvae, uncapped larvae, like eggs laid, they hatch, there they are, those little shiny white grubs, and then boom, gone, because literally they will just eat them because they can't feed them in some cases. So it could be a problem with the health of the pupa. It could be a problem with the hive's ability to care for it. All of those things are relevant. I don't really know how to nail it down any closer than that unless you saw them pull it out and could see that there was a significant number of mites. That would really be an interesting determining factor there.
Yeah, because they were close by, and there was 3 different stages of it. One of them, you know, it was like a mush. The other one had a little formation to it, but then there was one that was, it looked like it was getting completely formed inside the cell, and then the cell was opened up, because you could look at the front of it and you could actually see the front of the bee right in there.
Like its eyes.
Yeah, you could see that, but it was opened up. So that is kind of confusing. Why would it be opened up and it isn't fully formed yet? You know, so whether they opened it up or what it was, and they want to pull it out.
Right.
And I caught it before, but then, you know, I don't know.
Or
this whole year is confusing.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I also, though, if they take the cap off the cell, the pupa dies. Probably that takes care of the mites too, one would think.
Yeah. So I don't know. What I was going to try to do shortly is try the powder and the treatment and see what that does, and do it periodically, because I don't want to spray. I don't want to put any chemicals or anything in there right now.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So just going to give that a shot and see what happens and hope. But I haven't seen any problems with them otherwise.
Yeah.
You know, they all seem healthy, and I looked at them just now, well, recently, and they're bringing in pollen.
Crazy.
You know, not a lot, but they're bringing, you know, with everybody that's near the opening, you know, you get a half a dozen of them flying in periodically or whatever with pollen. They, you know, so they're pulling something from somewhere, but it's nothing like it was, you know, springtime when everybody going in had pollen.
Right.
Yeah.
That's one of the first clues that they're making lots of babies.
Yeah.
You know, there was the discussion about Rose of Sharon. We have quite a bit of that in our yard, and the bees seem to love it. And,
really?
Yeah. And the other one that they just go berserk over is Russian sage.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Huh.
So,
I wonder if there's a difference between West Coast and East Coast and Rose of Sharon. Here, here I'm seeing it still blooming in the mountains, but it took a long time to get started. So it was like a late summer thing, and now some of it is still out there. It's fading now, but I have not been close enough to any of it to see who's on it or if anybody's on it. So that's an interesting bunch of reports.
Yeah, well, I think I have some pictures that I shot of the bees working the Rose of Sharon. I will send those to you.
Yeah, do please.
I've been watching that too, Phil. You know, Rose of Sharon as a shrub is a late bloomer. I mean, that's normal.
Yeah.
Late summer and fall is their deal. But I'll watch them visit because they're desperate right now. Like they didn't touch a marigold, you know, all summer long, but they'll look at everything. And so a difference of flying in and looking at it and actually feeding is interesting too. But I have never seen a honeybee feed on a Rose of Sharon in Salt Lake.
Me neither. I've seen a lot of bumblebees, and you know, they'll go in there and they'll be coated. But
they walk around.
Honeybees will just go up to it, kind of look at it, walk around a little, and leave.
Yep. So it's got that great stamen, that great pattern, but they're just like, don't. They pass.
Unless it's the actual breed of the Rose of Sharon, you know, the bloom. Maybe there's different blooms that they favor better than others. I don't know.
Definitely.
Yeah. So send me pictures.
I have 5 different ones, 5 different colors, five different kinds, and they don't like any of them.
Rhonda?
Yeah.
Can you see the chat? Can you see the chat window?
I'm having, I'm on my phones because I don't have
Oh,
internet, so I'm
obviously you can't.
well, no, I have it. It's just a little bit more cumbersome, so I'm gonna go
I think
into it. I do have it.
he wants to let you know that he dropped his email address in there so you guys can communicate.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
I would love to meet you, and we can discuss some of these issues, because I live right over near the mouth of Parley's Canyon, so I'm not
Great.
that far from Holiday,
Nice.
and
That
I'd
sounds great.
love
Yeah,
to.
I'm writing it down right now.
There you
Pardon?
go.
Yeah,
Ye-
good. I got it.
Okay, so she's got that.
You got my
I got
email
it. Yeah,
address?
thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, shoot me yours, and let's plan a time to
Will
get
do.
together.
So let me
Sounds great.
come around to Haley, who's patiently sitting there with her mute on. Haley, what do you got for concerns at this point? What do you think?
I don't think I have any concerns. It's just such a learning experience the first year. I'm still kind of learning what's normal, what to expect. But I would wonder what you would do, Christy, because I'm due to inspect my hive. It's been about 2.5 weeks. Normally I try to do it every 10 days to 2 weeks. But now we have all this forest fire pollution. Should I wait until that clears? Do you think that would affect them of opening up their hive, or just go ahead and do it?
Well, I think that if there's that much smoke in the air around you anyway, it's in the hive too. So
Okay.
I don't think that would be a determining factor. I guess I would also feel a little pressured by the fact that it's been as long as it has. What were they looking like when you saw them last?
Lots of honey. And noticing that there's less brood than there was earlier in the summer, starting to be. And the brood bars, some of them are like, well, all of the brood bars have some honey. Some of the brood bars is almost like half honey. So it sounds like it's normal in the fall, less brood.
Yeah.
I guess, to what extent do you expect? Do you expect eventually to be no brood as the fall goes on?
Very close to no brood. I mean, there is at one point, I think, when it's gotten quite cold, I would probably say December, maybe January, when that's probably your most likely time to have absolutely zero brood. But the queen starts back up with her laying for the coming season in January. So,
right. Wow, January.
Yeah, but she's not laying 1,500 eggs a day at that point. She's laying little patches here and there. And that's one of the things that you will sometimes see is if you've got a hive that comes through the winter, you'll see that there have been those small patches and they may be a little bit scattered throughout the hive. And if there was conditions that said, yes, make more babies, and then a slam in the temperature, then that's what you will sometimes see is dead bees still on those little patches of brood because they were so desperate to keep them warm enough to survive. And there weren't enough bees to maintain that. So that's one of the bigger reasons that you'll see things go south. They'll get through the winter and then go south in the spring.
Interesting. So going into the fall, I know you mentioned stop inspecting when the propolis cracks.
That's for description, right?
Yeah, exactly. I just I have no idea what that means as far as timeline.
Well, in Maine, the way it usually worked was you got into September, late in September, maybe early in October, you got a cold, hard frost. And at that point, two things have happened. First off, instead of the propolis between the bars being sort of gooey and stretching out as you move the bars apart, it's very brittle and it snaps, kind of like plastic or peanut brittle. And so you find that they can't fix that because they can't forage for the resin that it's made from. So when they've gone through the hive and tried to glue everything closed and shut down any drafts, and anywhere that air and light is a pain in the butt for them, When you break that, then you kind of leave them defenseless against it for the winter. So when that is pretty much temperature dependent, you're going to get into the 40s Fahrenheit. So what's that, 3 Celsius, and below is really problematic. So whenever that happens in your area is the thing to know.
Okay. And it just has to happen once, and then even if the temperatures rise again, then you're still done for the year?
Well, if it rises to the point that the propolis goes back to being warm and squishy and gooey stuff, then, you know, it's not a problem when it breaks. But typically you get all the way down there and it's kind of like, okay, you're in for the winter.
Okay. So Maine, you said that was kind of end of September, beginning of October.
Right. It sounds like you're still pretty warm now, though. What did you say your temperatures are?
Yeah, it's still like quite warm, like 35 degrees Celsius as a high.
Whew.
Still like, it feels like summer, but yeah, usually September is quite nice, usually.
Yeah. Well, you're probably, if that's what your temperatures are going to be for the next few weeks, you're probably fine for about another month. And then when you start to see it fall off and stay, that's your cue.
Okay. And I'm starting to think about how to help them, protect them over the winter.
Mm-hmm.
So climate here being more wet than cold, although we do get some snow and a few weeks of very cold temperature, but I was leaning more towards like the tarp skirt style.
I think anything that acts as a barrier to catch the wind before it actually gets on your hive is really helpful. The tarp skirt, I think, you know, it's funny because it looks a little silly, but I have pictures of folks in Maine using that, and it's because all that wind hits that tarp skirt and it never contacts the box itself. It seems to do a pretty good job. Anything that breaks the wind. Wind is really kind of public enemy number one, because it just makes it difficult for the bees who aren't, they're not heating the space that they're living in. You know, like that's us. That's what humans do. We turn on the heat, we make hot air, we walk around naked in it. You know, so when you're bees, you're warm because you're in a cluster with other bees and you guys are shivering together, and that's how the heat is generated. So it's not so much about warming their space for them as it is about protecting it from anything that detracts from that process of keeping that cluster warm. And wind is definitely a thing.
So breaking the wind more important than actual insulation for warmth.
I think so, yeah. Because you're not really keeping any warmth in. The warmth is only in that ball of bees. But anything that keeps that ball of bees from having to continually try to struggle to keep things up to speed inside the ball, and also the fact that the wind is so drying, all of those are bummer for them trying to stay safe in cluster.
Right. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Anybody with anything else? I guess not.
This is probably cart before the horse, but I'm starting to read up on wax moth, and I've looked at pictures of what the webs look like, and I don't think I have any issues going on, but I was reading about if you're going to sell some honeycomb that people are freezing it and before selling, like is that like a standard practice to do that before selling, whether you see any wax moth indication?
Well, it makes a lot of sense, and it's not just wax moths, it's small hive beetle as well. Because if you can't see the pest, then one wants to assume that it's not in there, but eggs and larvae are tiny and they hide in crevices and they're not easy to spot. And so as an added assurance that you don't have any such problem, if you freeze it, then you kill any existing eggs and larvae, which especially in the case of small hive beetle is pretty important, because what do they do but defecate in the honey, and then it ferments in a fairly disgusting fashion, and that customer would not come back.
So yeah, that's what I'm hearing. We don't have small hive beetle issue here. But regardless, yeah, no, I get what you're saying. So, so you package it and then you freeze it and then
That
you're ready
work?
to go.
And unless you have a way where you can take it as, you know, all one piece of one comb and put it in and then cut it later.
Oh,
Probably
cut it
really
after.
doesn't matter, but if you did it before you packaged it, then any fallout that might occur from it wouldn't end up in your packaging. I don't know what that would be. It would, you know,
I
if you
didn't
had
even think about that. So when we're buying honeycomb, you know, we have frozen larvae and feces in there, right?
You may.
That's correct.
You may.
Okay.
Hopefully
I'm
not.
good with it.
Hopefully not. You know, because by the time it's capped off, the honey itself is in pretty good shape. But if you have a problem with small hive beetle, they will get in the honey, and the wax moths simply perpetuate themselves by, you know, by virtue of being there. And if they get the conditions to hatch, then you'll have the larva. And the larva, in both cases, there are differences, and you can pick them apart and say this is a wax moth and this is a small hive beetle. But frankly, they're inch-long, maggoty-looking caterpillars, and they are disgusting. So you really don't want them anywhere near your comb honey.
Okay. So, I mean, it's pretty easy to know if you have, it sounds like, you know that you have that going on in your hive, and I don't see anything like that, but still precaution, you know, just as a precaution, do the freeze, and if you're going to sell it or whatever, and cool. Okay.
It's, you know, it's just an added thing. Is it going to be a problem? Who knows? I doubt it, but you know, if you
I just didn't know if there's any quality issues with the wax. You know, getting that really soft wax is what makes it nice. You know, when you're selling the comb. I didn't know what freezing did.
That's a good question. I have never really thought about the effect on the wax of freezing it. Although, you know, I'm very concerned about, you know, preserving vegetables at the end of the summer, and but I don't know that there's any. When I think about comb of any kind, brood comb, honeycomb, whatever, that sits outside over a winter in a cold climate, I don't know of any effect that has.
Okay.
Bees do it in trees all the time, right? One would figure.
But they don't take it and spread it on toast, you know? So we want to make sure that it stays super soft and, you know, but no, I'm going to experiment with that.
Yeah, do let me know if you can detect the difference. That would be really interesting to know. Nobody's ever brought that up before.
Okay.
So, turn down my phone.
One thing, in terms of preparing for winter, this last winter when my top bar did so well, is I took your suggestion, Christy, and packed the attic with fiberglass insulation in plastic garbage bags, and then packed both ends of the hive inside where there was empty space with appropriately shaped pieces of 1-inch rigid foam, and then covered the outside of the hive again with the rigid foam, because fortunately where I have my hives, they're pretty well protected from the wind, and because they're in the corner of a yard with a garden shed, so the only direction is from the south, that is essentially not protected from the wind. And so with those preparations, it really seemed to have helped last winter.
Let me tell you, you could have knocked me over with a feather when I started getting reports back from people who said, I'm using this rigid foam insulation, and boom, their bees were overwintering. Because I would have said, how in the world is that doing a thing? But Haley, you might want to consider that instead of, or in addition or whatever, to the tarp skirt, because I was shocked at how well that seemed to work. And that was, most of those reports were coming back from New England beekeepers. So seems to be a pretty good one. And again, it's between the hive and the wind. So banging up against 1-inch rigid foam on the outside is doing a little less drying and desiccating and wind chill factor. All
That's
right.
helpful.
Yeah. I want to see your first hive come through the winter. That would be freaking awesome.
I hope to.
Do
Fingers
bear in
crossed.
mind, though, like you say, that you've got moist weather.
Mhm.
So Washington and Oregon beekeepers are your friends because they are looking at that same moisture thing. So it's a strange balance to try to want ventilation and insulation at the same time. So you
Mhm.
don't want to seal things up so tightly inside your hive that that moisture becomes a problem. But yeah, so it's a thing, you know. Seattleites
Yeah.
pan, they rust. Right, exactly. So look to not seal up too tight, but yet keep the wind from banging on the hive body.
Okay. I'll see how it goes.
Right. And you feel free to write and let us know.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
How are your bees doing, Christy, and how many colonies do you have this year?
This year I have none. It turned out that after I lost what we had last year, about 3, and they aren't here at home, which that drives me crazy. To me, that's the worst way to keep these. We decided not to start any because we also thought we were going to be moving this summer. So we bought a house and we thought we were moving, and that house fell through. And now we think we might be moving back to Maine. That is the plan, but it's a very early tentative plan. So no details, no date, no timing, no anything. That we would really like to go back to New England, and then we will fire back up probably about 4. 4 is about the right number. You've got enough parts that you can exchange. It's not so much work that you can't get it done, and it doesn't take up too much space. Here another thing that was an issue was we needed to be inside an electric fence, and the only level ground we have here at the house is driveway, paved driveway. So we took advantage of the very first friend we ever made in North Carolina, who lives 5 minutes away and has acres, and that's where we did the fence, and that's where we've been keeping bees for the last couple of years, but not this year. It looked like it was going to be such a pain to move.
Yeah.
So, not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Last call.
Christy,
All right.
I'd just like to say I certainly appreciate you setting this up. I think I've gotten some very valuable information, and it's interesting to hear the experiences from other folks.
I like that too. The fact that we are in other places and have different conditions, different weather, different plants, etc., I think really helps to sort of give you a 30,000 foot view, and it's a learning experience for all of us, trust me. So thank you guys all for being here, and stay tuned for more of these. I would like to be doing this every Saturday or some weeknight for the folks that can't do a Saturday, but COVID seems to just make everything like walking through clay. So it's been a really difficult season for that. Do stay tuned for the queen jails. Those are coming, I hope, next week. Oh, real quick, like I used to sell a nuke box, and we decided we didn't really like it, so we reworked it. Let's see if I can get to where can you see this. All right, so here's the fun thing about the nuke box. The lid is flat and fits, because of these, it fits into these little guys on the top, making it super easy to strap it together, hang it in a tree, whatever, and then inside it, it's just 8 regular old Gold Star top bars. Again, working on crunching the numbers and making that available too. And since we're thinking about moving, the more of this stuff I can sell before we have to pack it in a truck, the better. So bear that in mind, folks. But that's all I got. So thank you again for being here, and we'll post this as soon as we get the recording processed. And everybody be well, and you and your bees. Take care.
Thank you. I'll be in touch with you, Christy.
All right, Dave. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Okay.